So if you're having problems with Google Cloud, Google Home, Spotify, Cloudflare, Twitch, Snapchat, and Discord, and probably many, many other services, it could be because there is a massive Google Cloud outage happening right now. And by today, I mean Thursday, June the 12th, 2025. And this apparently happened at 1:51 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it affects Google Home, Spotify, indirectly affecting other services like Cloudflare, Twitch, Snapchat, and Discord.
Today, we're going to dive into what happened based on a really good article from The Verge. We want to unpack, who was affected and why this kind of thing actually matters so much now. Our goal is just to cut through the noise, give you the key takeaways from what The Verge reported.
That's right. And the core of it, like the article laid out, really came down to Google Cloud infrastructure. It looks like the disruption kicked off around 1:51 p.m. Eastern Time that Thursday.
Okay, so Google Cloud was the source. But what really jumped out from the report was, how far the impact spread. It wasn't just Google services.
Oh, absolutely. The ripple effects were, well, pretty immediate and really broad. The article specifically mentioned, popular stuff people use every day, like Google Home and Nest devices. People suddenly found they just weren't responding. And Spotify users, they apparently got this pretty technical error message popping up, something like audiences in Judot are not allowed.
Audiences in Judot are not allowed.
Yeah, that does sound specific. What does that actually point to?
Yeah, that specific message, audiences in Judot are not allowed. It's significant. It really points directly to a failure in how apps authenticate users, authorize them. It's all about identity verification. Basically, the system checking who you are and what you're allowed to do within the service. So seeing that specific error on Spotify, for example, it's strongly hinted that the underlying issue was with an identity management service, which, the source confirms Google later identified as the root cause. Wow, okay. So it wasn't just random glitches flickering on and off. It was a core identity system breaking, causing these specific errors everywhere.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just Spotify or smart homes then. The article listed a whole bunch of other major services too.
That's right, yeah. The Verge's reporting showed the impact hitting lots of other big cloud-based services, things that rely on that same infrastructure. We saw issues reported for platforms like Twitch, Snapchat, Anthropic, Shopify, Discord, even developer tools like Replit. Just the sheer range of those names, it really highlights how many different parts of our digital lives depend on these foundational cloud layers.
And I remember seeing something about Cloudflare having issues at the same time, which, sounds like another huge piece of the internet possibly struggling.
Right. That's a really important clarification the article made. While Cloudflare did report problems, their statement basically said it was because parts of their own services that use Google Cloud were hit. So their core network wasn't down itself, but because they rely on some of those affected Google Cloud services, well, they felt the impact too. It just shows how one problem can cascade, even between these major providers.
Fascinating. So one failure point in a key identity service at Google can cause trouble for so many others, including other big infrastructure players. How widespread was this, geographically speaking?
The initial effects seemed pretty global, but the recovery wasn't quite even everywhere. The article mentioned that, while some Verge staff in different places saw services coming back online relatively okay, other areas, particularly in the central U.S., like Michigan, they kept having issues for a bit longer.
Okay, right. So given how widespread it was, what did Google actually say was the technical cause? What broke?
Well, according to Google's own status updates, which came a bit later, they pinned the root cause on an identity and access management service issue. IAM, basically. It's a really fundamental part of cloud infrastructure. It manages who or what can authenticate and get access to specific resources.
Identity and access management, IAM. Okay, so if that system isn't working properly, then basically anything that needs to check your ID or your permissions just stops.
Precisely. Yeah, it's absolutely critical for security, for functionality. Google reported their engineers identified this root cause pretty quickly and started putting fixes, mitigations in place by about 3:41 p.m. Eastern. So roughly 2 hours after things started going sideways.
And how long did it take for things to actually get back online? Was it quick?
Well, Google's updates sort of tracked the progress. They eventually reported the underlying dependency for that IAM service was recovered everywhere except for one specific region, their S Central 1 data center region. So service recovery for individual products, the ones built on top of IAM, that was still ongoing for a while. There wasn't an immediate ETA at first, but then a later update around 5 p.m. ET suggested things should be mostly recovered within the hour.
And the article called out some specific Google Cloud products that were affected too, didn't it?
It did, yeah. Mentioned things like Cloud Firestore, Google BigQuery, and obviously the Identity and Access Management Service itself. Seeing those specific names really underscores how a problem at that fundamental level, can directly hit databases, data analytics, and the access control system itself. It just highlights how tightly interconnected everything is within the cloud.
Okay, so let's pull this together then. A core identity system, IAM, within Google Cloud had a problem on June 12th, and that led to these widespread, though thankfully temporary, issues for just a huge variety of online services that rely on it. What's the big takeaway for us here?
I think this outage really serves as a stark reminder of just how profoundly we rely on these massive, often invisible infrastructure layers like Google Cloud, from just simple things like, asking your speaker for the weather or streaming music to really complex work on developer platforms. So many of our daily digital interactions are built right on top of these foundational services. And when a critical piece, like the system managing identity and access across this huge network, when that falters, well, the ripple effect can be felt globally. Across apps that seem totally unrelated, it really highlights maybe the fragility that comes with having so much depending on a few key providers.
Yeah, it really makes you realize how much trust we place in these giant systems we use every single day without even thinking about it.
Exactly. All that hidden infrastructure just humming along until it isn't.
Which kind of brings us to a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe chew on. Just how interconnected are we, really? What does it actually mean for our daily digital lives when just one foundational piece of this massive online puzzle has a bad day? How resilient are we really to these kinds of bumps in the digital road? Something to think about.